Hi, everyone. It's Erin Monahan, the founder of Terra Media. My pronouns are she, her. And if you're new here, I'm a professional feminist killjoy and professional toxic masculinity interrupter. And today I want to talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, healing internalized white supremacy, and healing internalized misogyny. I'm going to talk about some personal stories and share some examples about how I've kind of trained myself to call things out or to address uncomfortable topics or conversations. And I'm going to be referencing notes here on my computer, on my laptop. And if I'm looking down and you're watching the video, that's why I'm looking down, because I don't want to miss anything or forget to mention something. And before we dive in, I've been talking about this in the email newsletter. If you haven't subscribed, you can go to the show notes and subscribe. I highly recommend you do, because you're going to be way more in the loop about things, because I don't publish a podcast episode as often as I would like. And I do share more through email, through the email newsletter. So you can go to terra-incognitamedia.com, and there will be a place where you can subscribe either at the bottom of every page, or there's like a tab in the drop down list. And you can also download our free PDF, which is a toxic masculinity in the outdoor industry cheat sheet, which will go through all these examples of toxic masculinity and give you some advice on how to interrupt it at the crag, at the gym, on the trail, in your family, getting your mail. I don't know. But anywhere and everywhere that toxic masculinity shows up, which is everywhere. And also, I just want to note that, so what I want to share with you, which is something that I've been talking about, like I said, on the newsletter, but you might not have heard about it if you aren't on the newsletter, is that we are going to be doing another toxic masculinity in the outdoor industry workshop. It's called Disrupting Toxic Masculinity in the Outdoor Industry and Beyond. And it is going to be, in the past, we've only done one day for the workshop, but every time I do it, it's way over time. It's always over 3 hours, and people get exhausted and tired, and understandably so. And it's a marathon. So I broke it up into 2 days this time. And I'm excited about that, because we're going to really be able to dive into the information and have time to process, have time to chew on it in between workshops. The first day is going to be on Saturday, March 21st, and it will cover deconstructing how conquest-based toxic masculinity, greenwashing, and ongoing colonization informs the outdoor industry's quote-unquote business as usual. And then the second workshop, which is going to be on Wednesday, March 25th, so a few days later, so we're going to have time to process and think about things in between, that is going to address how we can actively disrupt the status quo of the outdoor industrial complex and neoliberal environmentalism, so that we can create or co-create a safer outdoor industry for all. And so that one is going to be more like, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how do you actually interrupt toxic masculinity? How do you actually use your voice, use your platform, use your body to interrupt harmful things? And we're going to get into nervous system regulation. We're going to get into somatic tools. I'm going to go through some of the philosophies and kind of the things that have informed my practice. So we're going to talk about the importance of praxis, which is something that Black feminists like Bell Hooks emphasizes, which is like combining the practice and the theory, because with theory, it all just lives in your head. And if you don't actually put it into practice, and if you just have the practice, but you're not informed by the theory, then you can kind of lose track of your values. You can kind of lose track of, is this the most beneficial way or the most values aligned way of showing up in this moment? So it's really important to have both practice and theory. Praxis. So this is a great workshop for you if you are ever at a loss for what to say when you hear something harmful, you hear something offensive, and you're like, oh shit, like, I know that was wrong. I know that wasn't, I know that what that person said is really harmful, maybe obviously harmful, or even just like kind of like they didn't realize that what they said was harmful. And so how do you navigate these situations, and how do you address these things like on a everyday basis? And how do you become an advocate in your sphere of influence? Because I believe that we all can have an influence and have an impact in the space that we take up, no matter how big or small your platform is. We all have the capacity and should all take up that space to be in our power, to reclaim our power from these systems that want us to feel like we have no power, and to advocate for ourselves and also others. Because when we advocate for human rights and justice and anti-racist philosophies and ideologies, when we advocate for these things, when we advocate for dismantling white supremacy, when we advocate for pro-trans, pro-black, pro-Palestinian politics, then we're also advocating for ourselves. So I hope to see you at the workshop in March. There is a payment plan available, a 2-month payment plan, and also there are scholarships available. So if you really want to come, but finances are a bit tight, you can just email heyterracollective@gmail.com and let me know that you want a scholarship, and there will be no questions asked, and you will have immediate access to joining us for the workshop. So I can't wait to hear from you. I can't wait to see you sign up. Now let's get into the episode. I was born in so-called Costa Mesa, California, the traditional homelands of the Aksha Kemen, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm doing my best, or the Juaneño and Tongva peoples, or the Gabrielino peoples, and I moved around a lot when I was little. So when I was 5 years old, my dad, who was a computer engineer, now he's retired, but he took a job in so-called Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the traditional homelands of the Menominee, the Kickapoo, the Potawatomi, the Ochetisacoan, the Ho-Chunk, Miamia, and Peoria Oso nations. So my parents packed up all of our stuff, and my 4 siblings and I experienced snow for the first time when we moved to Wisconsin. Then a couple years later, we moved again, and we moved closer to my dad's side of the family to the suburbs of so-called Chicago, Illinois, which are the traditional homelands of the same nations as the land of so-called Milwaukee. And that's where we would ride our bikes down to the neighborhood pond and taunt the geese in the summertime, and then also do our best to balance on ice skates in the winter. And finally, the summer before 8th grade, my parents moved us again from my dad's job. He worked in hospitals, worked with digital imaging systems, and so he found a different job, and we moved to where I feel most at home today, in so-called St. Louis, Missouri, where I'm still at. Well, I moved away for a while, and then I moved back here a few years ago. And this is the traditional homelands of the Miamia, the Osage, the Okapa or Quapa, the Ochetisacoan, the Kickapoo, and the Kaskaskia peoples. So I want to share a story about something that was pretty it was one of those moments where it kind of alters your brain chemistry a little bit. And I think about this story a lot when I think about who I am today and the kind of moments that made me who I am. And so I want to paint this picture for you. I was in 8th grade. I was really shy when I was little, really uncomfortable with myself and being in my skin, and all this moving around just really did not help that. And I hated being the new girl. I was always short, always been short, and that was this is that was the thing that made me feel really insecure, because people would always think that I was a couple years younger than I was. People would always be like, who's this kindergartner hanging out in the 3rd grade line before we'd line up to go inside or whatever. But anyways, so I was really familiar with this feeling of being the new girl, but it really didn't get any less uncomfortable. I didn't feel any less awkward as I moved around a bunch, and it just felt really demoralizing to have to keep starting over, making new friends and putting myself out there and being vulnerable. And I just viscerally remember that feeling of just wanting to like crawl out of my skin, and just that awkward time period between my mom dropping me off or getting off the school bus and then going to class. And I just hated that awkward time. It just felt so awful. And so I think back to this time and I think about like this, that the silver lining of all this upheaval is that I attribute much of my ability to speak out against injustice to these times when I had to develop a relationship with this feeling of wanting to crawl out of my skin, so uncomfortable. And I, of course, not to compare my situation to anybody else who's ever felt like they wanted to crawl out of their skin. I know and I recognize my privilege as a white girl moving around. It was 1,000 times more easy and less painful and less traumatizing, I'm sure, than any other person who has had to experience being the new person at school or just being at a school. And so like I know that as a cis white girl, I've had a lot easier time being in my skin. I'm just sharing this as like a way to give you a little window into how I became who I am today and why I'm doing the workshop, why I continue to teach this workshop about disrupting toxic masculinity in the outdoor industry, and what I feel like informs that workshop and qualifies me to teach this workshop. This is just one small part of what I think qualifies me to teach this workshop. But I think back to this really funny time. Well, it was not funny at the time, but it's funny now. I think back to this time that we were on the bus, and every time I would get on the bus, we had assigned seats on this bus. And as a Virgo rising, I was really all about the assigned seat because it also made it less stressful to find a seat. I knew that I could just go to my seat. That's the seat that I sit down at. There's no questions asked. I don't have to like be awkward and try to like ask someone else if I can sit next to them, or it just eliminated so much stress for me. So like having that assigned seat was really important to me. But I noticed that more and more this dude, this neighbor of mine, I'm just going to say it, his name was Matt. And I love Matt because today we are friends or acquaintances, or I haven't seen him in a while. It's been like probably 10 years, but we became friends after. I'll just give you like, this is a spoiler alert. We became friends in college, and then I told him the story and he thought it was really funny. But he at the time was like the goth kid, goth skater boy, cool kid. And I always thought that those kids were really cool, but like I'm in my like preppy clothes and wearing my like pink Nikes and like my jean skirt and like perfectly straightened pin straight hair, and like it just felt so not cool compared to these people. And so Matt and his little gaggle of friends who were all like these cool emo punk skater kids, he just kept sitting in my assigned seat on the bus. And I was like so pissed about it. Like I was so pissed. I was like, this is such an injustice. Something must be done about this. And like I wasn't like, I didn't, I wasn't gonna like go to like the bus driver because that's not cool and that's embarrassing. So I mustered the courage. Like this took me, I don't even know how long. I don't know how long. I don't know how many days. I don't even know. Maybe it was weeks. Maybe it was months. I don't know. But it took me a long time to bolster the courage and to give myself enough pep talks to plan out and strategize how I was going to approach him. I mean, honestly, maybe it only took me a few days because like knowing myself, when I feel uncomfortable about something, it doesn't take me long to address it. And so now it's like I address it immediately. Like I have to address it like almost instantaneously, or if I can, I would like to address it as quickly as possible. Like if it's something that if I'm having a conflict with someone or something felt off with someone, I would like to address it as quickly as possible. Of course, respecting the other person's boundaries and time and all that stuff. But so thinking about little Erin and how uncomfortable I always felt when there was like an issue or I felt like there was an injustice to me or to someone else, it probably just took me a few days or a week to be like, nah, keep sitting in my spot. And like, yeah. So him with his like spiked out, like, they would take like I don't know what kids used back in the day, but like the gel, some kind of like really strong gel gluey type consistency gel thing, and like he would make his hair into like big spikes around his. It was really cool, but it was very intimidating for young preppy Erin. And so I don't even know if I would describe myself as preppy, but I definitely wasn't a goth punk kid, and I really wanted to be, because deep down in my Scorpio moon heart I really was. But on the outside I was like a fluffy pink powder puff girl Libra. Anyways, so I go, get on the bus one morning, and I approach him and I'm like, this is my seat. I'm sick of you sitting in my seat. Or I said something like, Matt, I didn't actually say that. I don't remember what I said, but I said something like, this is my seat, Matt, and you keep taking it, and this is my assigned seat. So I'm going to sit in my assigned seat. I said something like that. But I just remember like standing there and feeling so intimidated because all of his friends were sitting around him, and he moved. He was like, oh, okay. And then like got up and moved. It was like kind of anticlimactic, but I felt so fucking proud of myself. I felt so fucking powerful. And I was like, wow, if I can do that, if I can stand up to Matt, then like, what else can I do? So, yeah. And I realized that as a white girl, this is like the most trivial, most ridiculous example of like what a privilege for this to be the biggest pivotal moment for me growing up. But I just am sharing this because I want you to think about what are the pivotal. I mean, there are other pivotal turning point moments for me, like that were even, harder, or just like more weight to them, or like more consequential. But this is just a sort of a more lighthearted example and share, and I thought it'd be an easy thing for me to talk about, like easy as in like not like emotionally easy for me to share. So this was one of those like kind of pivotal moments that seem inconsequential, but looking back I'm like, okay, that was like one of the moments where I was like practicing to become who I am today, practicing to use my voice, because I was really shy. I didn't even want to like order food at McDonald's. I would have my little sister order my food for me. Like I didn't even want to speak to a stranger and put in my food order. And my parents at some point were like, no, you can't keep using your little sister to do that. So you're going to need to like order your food. And I was like, I'll just go hungry then. I'll just starve. Because I don't want to. I don't want to. So yeah. So the whole, so it was that. And then it was also, I got into theater when I was older. And I did cheerleading. And then I was like, okay, this is not it. I mean, I loved being thrown around in the air, but there's a lot of internalized misogyny. Like I didn't have that language back then, but that's what was going on. And so then I found I had always kind of done the theater thing, but then I tried to be like the popular cheerleading girl, and then I was like, yeah, no, fuck that. And then I fully went into theater and became a weirdo musical theater freak, obsessed kid. And that was really fun, and that's how I also became the expressed loudmouth person I am today. So thank goddess for theater, because that I feel like is the gateway drug for so many kids becoming their fullest authentic expression of themselves. And it was for me. And finding my voice and finding out who I was and being accepted for who I am in all of the many facets of who I am, and being able to figure that out alongside people that were safe to figure that out with. For me, that was my experience in theater. So from a young age, I know that whether it was something that I was experiencing that was wrong, that felt wrong, that felt like a sense of injustice, or whether it was someone else experiencing it, like I just knew that like it just always really bothered me, and I had to do something about it. And I could not fathom and wrap my head around the fact that there was any kind of injustice or any unfairness in the world, whether it was like within my siblings, or if I would notice that like as I became aware of like, I mean, which you do automatically when you're a kid, is like you notice like the social hierarchy at your school, and you notice like who's popular and who's not. And like that was always something that really bothered me, and I felt so angry about when I would see somebody who was like ostracized or made to feel less than because of their social standing or their class. And so I always felt that deeply. And then as I was getting into my 20s and getting into during college, when I learned about Black feminism, and I started to absorb reading and lessons from Black feminists and anti-racist educators, then I started to realize how much power, I started to more intimately realize how much power I had as I began to unlearn my internalized white supremacy and began to understand my positionality as a cis white woman from an upper middle class background and how much unearned power that offered me. And so I began to use my voice even more in the workplace at all of my jobs. Anytime that I would notice something that was unfair or unjust, I would speak on it. And that led to me getting fired a lot throughout my life. And I do want to share a quick story about something that inspired me to talk about this today is what happened last night at the climbing gym. So after I bouldered a little bit and I went downstairs to the weight room to do a little strength training workout because I like to go running and my knee has been bothering me. I noticed that if I don't do strength training, like my knees, I'm 36 and I need to do some strength training. And I think everyone should. So if you're not strength training, it doesn't matter how old you are, I cannot, I'm all proselytize about strength training because it's so good for you in so many different million gajillion ways. And it is kind of boring and it's kind of hard to get into. I mean, as a woman, I found it kind of hard to get into, but thankfully I was able to access some physical therapy. And then the physical therapist I worked with was amazing and taught me how to use weights. But I also did some YouTube videoing and research down YouTube rabbit holes. And also, anyways, all that to say, I'm a fangirl of strength training. And I think more of us should do it. Natasha Barnes is my favorite climbing, strength training, physical therapist coach. She's amazing. And she shared on the internet on one of her Instagram posts about how just doing 1 day of strength training a week extends your life by like 10 years or something like that. So not that we're trying to live forever and optimize our bodies like these weirdo, like white supremacist, patriarchal bros on the internet who are weird and scary and eugenicist about their like optimizing their life, the kind of like Andrew Huberman bros, but just the fact that it's like we want to be able to take care of our bodies. That's just self-care. I think especially for women and for non-binary folks and for trans folks, it's intimidating to go into a gym, and if we can in any way unlearn that weights are not for us, I'm going to encourage you to do that because I know that these spaces are inherently unsafe for anyone who's not a cis white dude. And I also want to encourage you in the ways that you feel able to, in the ways that you feel safe to, take up space in the weight room because you deserve to be there just as much, if not more, than the cis white dudes who are taking up space there, who are grunting and taking their shirts off like nobody wants to see that. And also like playing their music when nobody asked them to play their music. Like that's one of the annoying things at the gym that I go to. It's Andrew Huberman bros, but just the fact that it's like we want to be able to take care of our bodies and we want to, that's just self-care. That's to me like, I think especially for women and for non-binary folks and for trans folks, it's intimidating to go into a gym. And if we can in any way muster, if we can in any way unlearn that weights are not for us, I'm going to encourage you to do that because I know that these spaces are inherently unsafe for anyone who's not a cis white dude. And I also want to encourage you in the ways that you feel able to, in the ways that you feel safe to, take up space in the weight room because you deserve to be there just as much, if not more, than the cis white dudes who are taking up space there, who are grunting and taking their shirts off. Like nobody wants to see that. And also like playing their music when nobody asked them to play their music. Like that's one of the annoying things at the gym that I go to is like you can plug your phone in and then you're subjecting everybody to your music tastes, and it's so absurd to me. Like I'm like listening to like astrology podcasts. I'm listening to hood rat to head wrap. I mean, I just thought about it the other day and I was like, that'd be so funny if I like plugged in my phone and then like I just started listening to like the astrology podcast or something. And it's like, what? Fuck you. I don't care. Like you subject me to your like 9 Inch Nails or Bon Iver, or like the other day somebody was listening to Silver Sun Pickups and I'm like, oh, you're so cool listening to some indie Silver Sun Pickups. Like, wow, like it's indie now. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of was marketed as indie back then too, I suppose, but now it's like even more indie. I do like those bands. I do like Bon Iver. I do like Silver Sun Pickups, but the fact that a white dude is feels like no remorse or no qualm with just plugging their phone in, it just takes some level of entitlement and some level of comfort that I don't have. And maybe, I think it is for so many reasons that I don't feel comfortable doing that, especially particularly because I'm a woman and I've learned that I don't know, it's also like social grace, like understanding that not everybody wants to listen to your music or wants to hear. It's like, why do I don't, yeah, I don't know. But that's my thought on it. Anyways, last night I was at the gym and I was doing my strength training workout and I overheard a couple people talking. They're just, it's a small space, so it's not like it was hard to like overhear. But it was two dudes, presumably two dudes and a woman, and the woman said, yeah, that climb was, and then said the S word, the slur against Indigenous and Black people. I'm not going to say it, but it's a slur. Megan Thee Stallion had a song named after this word, and which is great. I love that song. It's a great song. Love Megan Thee Stallion. Big fan. And but as white people we shouldn't be using this word, and it's become a word that it's part, I think, of AAVE or Black language to describe something as the S word, and to it's used as a way to reclaim the word because of course for since the start of colonization, Indigenous people, Black people have been called this word to dehumanize them. And she said this word to describe a climb or somebody climbing and describing their climbing in this way as a way to be like, yeah, that was awesome. Like, yeah, you killed it. That was so S word. And I sat there, I was at the end of my session and I kind of sat there while they were talking and I was thinking about like, how do I approach this? Like, the question first that I asked myself was, is this something that I should bring up? Like, is this something that I should interrupt? And um, should I go talk to that person? And my relationship with this climbing gym, the reason why it wasn't an instant, yes, I'm going to talk to this person, is because this is a climbing gym that I've had issues with in the past. And I've actually been banned from this climbing gym. And I recently was able to smooth over things in the past with the owners and am now able to climb there again. And it's really, I found that during the 2 years that I took off of climbing a forced break because I couldn't climb at this gym, I found that climbing is a huge, 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 huge source of mental, emotional stability for me. Like being able to exercise and work out, of course, is always, is for a lot of people can be that. But particularly climbing for me is a way that I do that. And I don't get any kind of the same amount of joy does not come from nearly anything else that I do, not from running, not from just lifting weights. And so it really means a lot to me that I'm able to climb there again. And I won't get into like the details of why I was banned, but basically it was that I was starting conversations about different quote unquote political things in the space and challenging their business policies. And they didn't like that. So they told me I couldn't climb there anymore. So now that I'm back, I'm kind of treading lightly, I guess, or just trying to see, like, trying to really judge or really test or really get a feel for like what is something that I want to speak out about and what is something that I have to kind of just say like I can address like and channel my energy into in other ways. But I also never want to cop out of interrupting oppression or interrupting something harmful when it's my duty to, as someone who holds the positions of power that I do, somebody who holds the identities that I do. So in that moment, I thought to myself, okay, well, how am I going to address this? Like, how will I say this to this person? And of course, like, the it was interesting the way my brain, because of internalized white supremacy, went to, oh my God, I can't believe this person said that. Like, wow, they're so ignorant. They're so messed up. Like, all these like negative attributions to this person's character came up in my head. So, like, that finger wagging white person came up in my head. And then I was like, okay. And like, my brain kind of went down the tunnel of like thinking about the hypothetical of what will happen when I say something to these people, to this person. And I went down the path of imagining them like being upset or angry with me, or the worst case scenario, my brain, right? Like, our brains are kind of wired to go to the worst case scenario in these situations. And it's doing that to protect ourselves. And so that's why it's really good to do nervous system work, because then we can be better at judging whether or not that worst case is actually going to happen, or if we can take that risk anyways, risking that the worst case could happen, and is it really going to be all that bad if it does. But the worst case scenario for me was that these people were going to be like, oh my God, who cares, like, um fuck you, like, how dare you tell me what to do. Like, I had this instant like narrative or script play out in my head where these people were not responding openly or graciously to what I was going to say. So that happened in my head. And then I thought about, this all happened within, like, I mean, less than a minute, 2 minutes in my head. But then my brain shot to thinking about the ICE raids, started thinking about police brutality. And I thought about my values, and I thought about, it is completely unaligned for me to roll up this yoga mat that I'm stretching on and walk upstairs without addressing this. And so I needed to, at that moment, I grounded myself and I was like, okay, in what is the best way to approach the situation? And I said thank you to the finger wagging white woman in my head. The finger wagging white person in our heads is kind of like protecting us from being the ones who are like quote unquote bad. But that's a whole other conversation too, about how there are no good white people and there's no binary of good and bad. And so I've talked about that and written about that a lot. But I thanked the part of me that was trying to, like, these parts of ourselves are always trying to protect us in some way. So I think that allowing space for that voice in my head to come up and being compassionate with it, and not repressing it immediately or shaming it immediately, but noticing and observing that part of me still quietly lives on in my brain, in the recesses of my brain. Because that voice, that identity of the finger wagging white woman, she was alive and well in my mid-20s, and she was causing quite a ruckus, quite a harmful ruckus. And I had to really do a lot of healing and work around healing that part of myself that needed to go around and point the finger at everybody else instead of looking at myself and pointing that finger inward and at me. So I sat there with that feeling, and I remembered who I was today, and I remembered my values, and remembered that I'm trying to create community. I'm trying to make friends. The motivation for speaking on this is not because I want to be right, and not because I want to show this person how much I know or how much better I am than them. It's because I care about the people who are hurt and dehumanized by that word. And it's because I care about me and this person who said it. And I care about everyone's humanity. And I care about us creating a safer world and community for everybody. And as white people, we are also harming ourselves when we use that language, because it puts us in this position of being the perpetrator of harm, of being the oppressor, and that's also dehumanizing to us. So all of this was going on in my head, and I thought to myself, like, another thing that came up for me was that I'm thinking about how as white women we get away with so much harm and so much violence, but there's this brand of being a white woman, of being nice and pure and innocent and sweet, and there's just this immediate trust and niceness branding that comes with being a white woman. Wherever you go, whatever store you walk into, no matter who you are, no matter what politics you hold, you are going to be seen as one of them, quote unquote. One of them is in like the cis hetero patriarchal white supremacists, agents like we as white women are always going to be seen that way. And so I can walk around and in my head I have the politics of abolition, but on the outside, people are going to like see me as somebody who maybe is Republican or is like a neoliberal white girl and a Karen. So I thought to myself, how can I use my Karen-ness in this moment for good, for justice, for social harmony, for creating community, for creating safety, instead of perpetuating a culture of silence and avoidance, violent silence, perpetuating a culture of violent silence, violent avoidance, and creating a culture of sweeping things under the rug, of not talking about these things that are important to talk about and address. That doesn't go, that is anti all my values. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to lean into this. I'm gonna reclaim the Karen that I am. And I'm not gonna be the Karen that's like pointing the finger and pushing away my accountability in this moment, because I'm a white woman too who has caused harm and will inevitably cause harm in the future, no matter how much I try to not cause it. But I can be accountable in the moment and be receptive to anybody who wants to share with me the harm that I've caused, and I can be accountable to that and repair it. And so I went in the direction of trusting this person, of leading with trust, of leading with community, of leading with heart, instead of what my younger self would have done, which is to lean into the finger wagging white person. So I went up to this person, and there was three of them, but then it was kind of like as I started talking to her, the other two kind of kept on their conversation, and I said to her, "Hey, sorry to bother you, sorry to interrupt, but I had overheard that you said this word, and I have learned that it is dehumanizing to Black people and Indigenous people, and that, you know, as white people, we can't use it, but that Black people and Indigenous people can, because they're reclaiming the word that has been used against them in their humanity since colonization and chattel slavery." And yeah, so I was like, I don't want to be an asshole, and like I'm not trying to like call you out or anything, but I heard it, and I've learned that this is a harmful thing to say, and I just wanted you to know. And she was so receptive. So I yeah, it was so nice and healing for me. Honestly, it was healing because she was really receptive, and she was like, "Yeah, it's just something that I just said, and I didn't even think about it, and I'm definitely gonna think about that going forward, and I won't use it anymore. So thank you." And I was like, "Yeah, thank you for being receptive, and I really appreciate it." And it was a really nice exchange, and it felt nice. But yeah, I just, all that is to share with you these examples of like the bus story. I feel like relates to this because little Erin on the bus walked and stood up to Matt so that adult Erin could talk to her fellow white woman about something harmful she said, and then, if a fellow white woman wants to share with me something that I say that's harmful in the future, I will be receptive as well, and choose community and trust and love and heart and care versus the internalized misogynistic, internalized white supremacist response of fuck you, you're not better than me. That's not getting us anywhere, right? So I have a lot more to say about all this, of course, and there are a lot more examples that kind of sprinkle throughout my life that have informed me and who I am as a person today, and have the things that I've participated in, trainings I've gone to, classes I've taken, research I've done to inform my positioning and how I approach things like this. And that was just one small example, but I talked about how recently I got fired for teaching about Palestine at the school that I was working at the beginning of the year, and literally got fired in my first week. And I had to address and have a conversation with the principal about why I chose to teach that lesson in an art class. And I recorded the conversation and I published it on the podcast. So you can go to the most recent, I think it was episode 31, where I published the conversations that I had with the principals, where I challenged what they were saying and pushed back against, like, basically they were censoring me, and then they ended up firing me. But somebody had commented, like, I would love a podcast episode about, like, how you do this. Like, how do you feel so confident and measured and grounded in speaking about these things with somebody who's in a position of power over you? And that has come with a lot of practice, a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of learning and unlearning. And also my positionality informs much of my comfort in doing that now too. And owning the power that I have in a way that I can harness it in a way that is anti-oppressive in my actions. But that's what we talk about in the workshop. So, like, that is literally what the second part of the workshop is all about. I teach you my structure and approach and the steps. I've kind of laid it out into different steps that you can take to start practicing and getting better at being uncomfortable, because that's really what this work is all about. Disrupting toxic masculinity in the outdoor industry is getting good at being uncomfortable and reclaiming your power. And we have so much more power than we think. And I'm going to end with my favorite quote from Winona LaDuke, who said, quote, "One of our people in the Native community said that Native people know they are oppressed, but don't feel powerless. White people don't feel oppressed, but feel powerless. Deconstruct that disempowerment. Part of the mythology that they've been teaching you is that you have no power. Power is not brute force and money. Power is in your spirit. Power is in your soul. It is what your ancestors, your old people gave you. Power is in the earth. It is in your relationship to the earth." End quote. And this is it just gives me chills when I hear it and when I think about it, because it is such a powerful thing to point out that as white people, we don't feel oppressed, but we feel powerless. And I see that so often in my family, in my friends, and it's so disappointing and it's so disheartening. And so I share these stories to just emphasize what Winona LaDuke is saying, which is that we do have power, no matter who you are, no matter what your identities are, especially as white people, because we have more capacity and forgiveness in the society and can get away with a lot more. So we should be using our voices more. We should be the loudest ones screaming out against injustice when it's appropriate and when that tactic is the most useful and will have the most benefit to the people that are harmed or who have been harmed. I think you know what I mean, but we have more power than we think we do. And so this is me challenging you to recognize in what situations do you have more power than you realize, and how can you get good at wielding that power for the greater good, for collective liberation. Sending you so much love, and remember, the workshop is happening on March 21st and 25th. It's a 2-part workshop. Go to the show notes to find out more, to learn more about the workshop, and to sign up. And I do hope to see you there. And if you have any questions, as always, you can email me at heyterracollective@gmail.com. Visit terraincognitamedia.com to read our articles, to get on our email list so you can be in the know about what's going on, and peruse old episodes of the podcast, because there's a lot of good ones, if I do say so myself. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and on TikTok at Terra Incognita Media. I'm sending you so much love, all my feminist killjoy rage and love, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.